So very good morning to one and all. Today we are going to discuss a topic which is more relevant in this during this period of time, and we are going to discuss about the disease transmission of infectious diseases. I am Dr. Alex Joseph, epidemiologist from SRM School of Public Health, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Kattangulattur, Chennai, Tamil Nadu. So we will be discussing briefly about the epidemic theory. Here we will be discussing about the basic reproduction number, that is the R naught value, then the effective reproduction numbers, then the epidemic thresholds, herd immunity, and epidemic curves. So this will be a very brief session, basically to keep an understanding or just to give a gist of this whole topic. And this particular session is open for all public health professionals as well as allied health professionals, so that they can read upon further by attending this session. So coming to the definition of infectious diseases. So this is a definition given by John Last in the Dictionary of Epidemiology, that it is an illness caused due to specific infectious agents or its toxic products. So that arises to a transmission from an infected person, animal, or a reservoir to a susceptible host, either by directly or indirectly through an immediate plant or animal or vector or even an inanimate environmental. Okay. So these characteristics of an infectious diseases, you can broadly say it is the ability to cause infection, that is the infectivity that can be found out the number of infected divided by number of susceptible. Then pathogenicity, that is the ability to cause disease, that is the number of clinical cases divided by number of infected. Then about the ability to cause death, that is the virulence of a disease, that is found by getting the number of death divided by number of disease. Okay. So nowadays we are seeing this as a break the chain. So there's a campaign which is happening right now in Kerala, which is about the COVID-19. So what is this chain they are talking about? So this is the chain we all have read and forgot about, the chain which we have studied in our community medicine classes. It is a chain of infection. So the chain of infection includes the agent, that is the either parasite, virus, bacteria. Then the reservoir, that means where is the germ which actually lives in. And the portal of entry, how many germs get out. I mean, how the germs get out from that. Then mode of transmission, that is how the germs get around. Then portal of entry, that is how the germs get into the susceptible host, and also into the host, that is what are the kind of people or the people who are getting infected. So this is the chain of infection, and the idea here in this COVID-19 situation is like breaking the chain of transmission so that the particular disease can be halted or the progression can be slowed. So other characteristics when you see about an infectious disease is that the exposure to infectious agents. So the exposure to infectious agents can lead to multiple outcomes. That is, you can have no infection, you can have get infection, you can have subclinical infection, and also it can go as a carrier state. So in case of the people who are getting clinical or subclinical infection, the outcomes can be, they can either be a carrier, they might be outcomes of death, then they can be immunity, and also they can even have no immunity also. That depends upon the disease to disease. And similarly, subclinical also has a carrier state. They can even go or just have immunity for the rest of the life, and certain diseases may not even possess an immunity. So the infection, looking at the timeline of the infection, the dynamics of infectiousness and the dynamics of disease. So in infectiousness, then you can see that there is a latent period, then there is an infectious period, and then a non-infectious period. So this can be differ from case to case. And dynamics of disease, the corresponding can be roughly said as the incubation period, the symptomatic period, and non-disease period. This is with respect to time. Okay, so now coming to the transmission of the diseases, there are certain terminology which has been used. One is the index case. An index case is the first case identified in an investigation. So then second is the primary case that brings the case that brings the infection to a particular population. Then it's a secondary case, that is the cases which are being infected by the primary case. And tertiary case, that is the cases infected by the secondary cases. So you can see that in a disease which has been imported, say for example like a disease like Ebola or COVID-19, where there is an imported case, you can see the primary transmission, then the secondary transmission and tertiary. That is the primary contacts, secondary contacts, and the tertiary contacts. Okay. Now coming to community spread. So what is community spread? This is something, a buzzword we have been hearing, whether there is a community spread or there is no community spread in the particular situation which we are referring. So community spread is said to be happen, or community transmission is that the source of infection is unknown. That means when you are not sure from where or from whom a person got infected, then you can say that it is a beginning of the community transmission. So coming to the WHO definition, a community spread or transmission is evidenced by the inability to relate confirmed cases through chains of transmission for a large number of cases. So this is not a one or two or every isolated cases are there. You cannot say or confirm that this is an community transmission has started. But for a larger number of cases, if there are no evidence or we are not able to find the chains of transmission or from whom it has been infected, then you can suspect that community transmission might have started. Or by increasing positive tests to sentinel sample surveillance. Okay, that means through sentinel surveys we get more and more samples getting infected, and then there is no, we cannot trace back, then also it can be said as a beginning of community spread. So coming to the another terminology what we are hearing during the recent time, that is R0. So I think all of you must have seen this movie, or at least by now or previously you have seen the movie Contagion. And it is not a jargon which the Hollywood has made it, but it is a scientific explanation, and it is scientists use the reproduction number to describe the intensity of a infectious disease outbreak. Okay. So coming to the basic reproduction number, or R0. So there are some people who keep it saying basic reproduction rate, but rather than we can keep it as a number because it's not a rate. Okay. So the basic reproduction number, that is the R0, is the measure of transmission or the potential transmission of a disease. So the formal definition of a R0 is a number of cases on an average an infected person will cause during the infectious period. So it can be said as the average number of secondary infections produced by a typical case of an infection given in a population where everyone is susceptible. Okay. So for example, let's see a hypothetical example. Okay, it's an hypothetical example. So we can just keep it that a disease which is now it is circulating, that is the COVID-19. Let's keep the for the study purpose that the R0 value is 2. Then we could expect that each case of this particular disease will produce 2 new secondary cases. And the assumption here is assuming that everyone around the case is susceptible. So in a case of new disease which has not been introduced in this particular community, say for example COVID-19, almost all are susceptible for this particular disease. So R naught excludes new cases produced by the secondary cases. So in the picture, you can very well see that from one person there is two people who are getting affected, that is a secondary case. Then from this again another 2%, subsequently it keeps on an exponential growth. So now coming to the calculation of R naught, how it can be estimated. So it's a potential measure of transmission of disease, and the mean number of individual infected by a case, or average or mean number of infected by a case throughout the infectious period and when introduced in a susceptible population. So there are certain things which actually plays an important role in deciding the calculation or estimation of this R naught value. Certain things are from empirical research, certain things are from assumptions or statistical modeling. Okay, one is the P, that is the probability of transmission of per contact, then number or the contact per unit time, then the D is the, like we said, the duration of the infectiousness. Okay, so how to interpret the R naught value, that is a thing. So in R naught value, if is equal to 1, then you can say that there is an endemic state. So R naught value, if it is greater than 1, then you can say that there is a larger number of cases and it is of an epidemic capacity or potential. And if R naught is less than 1, then you can say that the disease is slowly is to exist. So this is one example from Zika virus. I am taking it, which has been adopted from that. So from here you can see that the transmission between, this describes about the transmission between two individuals. So there is an incubation period, there is a period of symptoms which is setting in, then there is a period of immunity, if at all. For any disease it may vary. If some diseases may have immunity, some does not give immunity, lifelong or short or even at all. So the time between one person started getting symptoms and the second or the secondary case getting the symptoms is called the serial interval. Okay, so for a sustained transmission, when you look at the thing, so to calculate the basic reproduction number, you should have the contact rate, the probability of transmission per that particular contact, and also duration of the infectiousness. Okay, and this reproduction number, that the basic reproduction number divided by the serial number will give us the transmission rate of the disease. Okay, so some more things more about the reproduction number that we already said, that it is depending upon the rate of contacts of the host population, then probability of infection being transmitted during the contact, and also the duration of the infectiousness. So in many circumstances, not all contacts will be susceptible for infection. So therefore, this basic reproduction number might be little bit less, and that time we can call something as an effective reproductive rate, or R. So what is a effective reproductive number? In a population, rarely the total number of people are susceptible unless and until it's a very new infection which is not ever introduced in the human population. So some contacts might be immune either by a prior infection or because due to immunization. So not all contacts who become infected, that is the average number of secondary cases per infection, will be lower than the basic reproduction number. So the effective reproduction number is the average number of secondary cases per infectious cases in a population made up of both susceptible and non-susceptible hosts. The interpretation of the R value is also similar to that of R naught value. So coming to the estimation of the effective reproduction number. The effective reproduction number can be estimated by the product of basic reproduction number and the fraction of the host population that is susceptible. Okay, so R can be calculated by R naught value into the fraction of population. Say for example, if the R naught value for influenza is 12 and almost half of the population are immune, then the effective reproduction rate can be found that the 12 into 0.5 and that gives the effective reproduction rate as 6. So under these circumstances, a single case of influenza would produce an average of 6 new secondary cases. So to successfully eliminate a disease from a population, the R value needs to be less than 1. Then coming to herd immunity. So what is herd immunity? So herd immunity occurs when a significant proportion of the population, that is the herd, have been vaccinated or are immune by some other mechanism. Example like themselves getting the infection. That will result in protection for the susceptible or unvaccinated individuals. So the larger number of people who are immune in a population, the lower likelihood that a susceptible person will come into contact with the infection. That is the basic logic behind that. So it is more difficult for disease to spread between individuals if large number are immune as the chain of infection is broken. Okay. So coming to the development of herd immunity. So if the virus keeps spreading, eventually so many people will have been infected if they survive and they become immune in best cases, that the outbreak will fizzle out in its own as the pathogen, the germ, find it harder and harder to find a susceptible host. So this is the phenomena known as herd immunity. Okay, the development of herd immunity in a new disease where nobody is previously susceptible can, one of the way through this is this, by getting infected itself. So in the picture you can see that if there is no herd immunity, the rate of spread of the disease is going to be high. But if there are people who have herd immunity, then you can see that the rate of disease is spreading and totally that the R naught value will be less or less than 1. So estimation of herd immunity. So herd immunity also is a product of the R naught value, so or the basic reproduction number. So it is the proportion of the population that needs to be immune in order for an infectious disease to become stable in that community. So it can be either achieved by immunization or getting infected itself. So the R naught value or the reproduction number should be equal to 1. So the herd immunity can be calculated by R naught minus 1 divided by R naught. This is an estimation. Okay. So when the threshold of the herd immunity surpasses, that is the R value is less than 1, the number of cases of infection decreases. And this is an important measure used in infectious disease control and immunization and eradication programs. So coming to epidemics. So epidemics is defined as a large increase in the frequency of occurrence of a disease in a population above an expected or a baseline in a given period of time. And the threshold is selected above which the term epidemic is applied. So in previous classes, we have all learned while the outbreak investigation that what is the threshold. So taking an example from the same, so I'm using it, the normal seasonal flu activity in England, they calculate certain things regarding 30 to 200 general practice consultation. So if it is more than 200 per lakh population, then the epidemic threshold has reached. That means you can say that there is an epidemic of flu-like or influenza-like illnesses. Okay. So what is the critical community size. So critical community size and the outbreak threshold are something very similar, but it is different. So a critical community size is defined as the number of the population size or the population size needed to sustain an outbreak once it has appeared. So once there is a small outbreak, to sustain that outbreak, there is a set of number of population which it has to be there. So that is called the critical community size. And the outbreak threshold is something very similar to that, but it is different. So it actually measures how many infected individuals are needed to ensure that an outbreak is very unlikely to go extinct by drift. So one is about the total population size, and the outbreak threshold measures how many people need to be infected so that an outbreak is very unlikely to extend. Okay, so you have to note that the outbreak can still go extend in a longer term even though the outbreak threshold is exceeded. Okay, so coming to epidemic curves. So what is an epidemic curve? So epidemic curve is a graph that is a simple, very simple term. You can call it as a graphical representation of distribution of new cases of an infectious diseases in relation to the time or the onset of the illnesses. So in a plot of a graph, you can see that the x-axis will give the time label, that is the date or time of onset of illnesses, and the y-axis will give the number of cases. The time interval of the onset of illness will be determined by the incubation period. So outbreak pattern. Okay, so the overall shape of an outbreak, an epidemic curve can reveal the type of outbreak. So we can broadly classify it into a point source outbreak, a continuous common source outbreak, a propagated outbreak, or intermittent outbreak. So we will see what are the different types and with some examples from the epidemic curve itself. So a point source outbreak, person are exposed to the same common source over a brief period of time. Okay, say for example a single meal or an event attended by all classes. Say for example they have food from outside or from the hostel at a particular day or a particular period of time. Okay, so the number of cases rapidly increases to a peak and gradually falls off. So, and also the another peculiarity of this, majority of the cases occur within one single incubation period. Okay, so that is point source outbreak. Now coming to continuous common source. So the exposure is not confined to one point in time, but it is prolonged over a period of days, weaker or longer. That is the continuous. It's not at a point of time the exposure, but the exposure happens for a period of days. Such are cases that are spread over a greater period of time depending on how long the exposure exists. And it happens more than one single incubation period. So this particular curve actually shows us the number of cases which is increasing over a particular period of time with different incubation periods. Okay, so intermittent, what is an intermittent epidemic curve looks like? So it is also similar to a continuous source, but the exposure is not continuous, the exposure is intermittent. So there are multiple peaks that you can see, the multiple length of the height of the number of cases, that is. So there is no relation to the incubation period, reflects only the intermittent time of exposure. Example can be contaminated food products sold over a period of time. So the typical graph will look like this. The epidemic curve will look like this. Now coming to a propagative or progressive source of epidemic. This is the kind of curve which we are seeing right now during the COVID-19 times. Okay, so we do not have a common source here. So caused by spread of pathogen from one susceptible person to another. So it tends to have a series of irregular peaks reflecting the number of generation of infection. So multiple peaks separated by approximate incubation period can be found in the propagated source epidemic. So what are the few uses of this epidemic curve? So we have already discussed in last class. So these are like determine the type of epidemic, whether it is continuous, point source, propagated, then determine the difference between maximum and minimum incubation period. So estimate the likely time of an exposure and thus focus investigation on a particular period of time. This is especially when we discuss the outbreak investigation. Then determine the incubation period in cases where the time of exposure is known. And also it helps to identify the outliers of that particular outbreak or that particular disease. Now the another terminology which we have been constantly hearing is about the flattening of the curve. So what is flattening of the curve? So we basically, it is about the epidemic curve, what we were referring, and how the spread of the disease can be prevented so that the curve become less steep. So that is the terminology which is being casually used, is called the flattening of the curve. A flattened curve means few people getting infected at a same time. Okay, so at the same time few people are getting infected. That can lead to decreased impact on our capacities for treatment, our hospitals, our communities, our lives. So this is a example or how the curve can get flattened. Okay, so there are also some scientific or some calculations we need to be doing to understand how much or how long you need to flatten the curve, or what are the interventions, or what is the threshold limit where the curve has to be brought down or the peak has to be brought down. So that depends upon one single factor, that is the capacity of the healthcare. That means the capacity of our health system to see or manage the number of casualties. Otherwise, it can lead to a disaster. That is the mass casualty incidents. When you take about health system or a hospital, a disaster, a hospital-based disaster is something which, when they are not able to handle the number of cases more than the bed capacity, okay, or ICU capacity or the emergency capacity. So that is a capacity or indirect measure of the capacity of healthcare system. So it can be differing from country to country, state to state, and setting to setting. Each hospital, a tertiary hospital may have a different number, the catchment area, all these are. So flattening the curve is to bring down the peak of the curve or the number of people getting affected at a given point of time less than the capacity that the healthcare system can afford to take. Okay, and you can see that the capacity of the health system itself will gradually come down when a larger epidemic or a pandemic like COVID-19, where each and every person are susceptible and might come down with the disease. So the capacity of the healthcare system or our threshold stimuli or the threshold of the healthcare system might even slightly come down while the disease is progressing or an epidemic is progressing. And we have seen that in case of COVID-19, social distancing and hand hygiene practices using personal protective devices in the hospitals have brought down or bring down the size of the epidemic. Now you have talk about double humped curve. So this is something which has been again in news, that once the restrictions are taken off, there might be again a resurgence of case. So this is basically coming from the experience from the 1918 Spanish flu in Colorado. So it is usually, some people call it as a Danvers curve because it was in the particular area. And this is one particular graph which has been showing when in the Colorado, where they were lifted the restrictions and there was a sudden spike in increase in number. So a premature removal of restrictions can lead to a trajectory that can be soon turned into a double hump curve. That means the two peaks that may happen, and it can overwhelm the capacities of the hospital. So in a staggered manner, the restrictions have to be lifted in the coming future so that the second wave doesn't cross the capacity of our health system to manage. So otherwise, what will happen from the Spanish flu example, or it is remaining as that the second wave can even go higher, exceeding our healthcare facilities, leading to a disaster, and thus spoiling the entire benefit of the address restrictions which has been kept prior. That means right now there is a lockdown, the 40 days lockdown, and immediately if the restrictions are taken out, it can lead to a disaster if it crosses the threshold limit. So these are the some of the references for this particular, and each of the pictures also have given some references. So I thank one and all for attending this session.